It is false that some students are not social media users. Therefore, some students are social media users. To evaluate this argument from the Boolean standpoint, we use the modern square of opposition. We have an O statement premise and an I statement conclusion, and I can see that the corresponding O and I statements on the modern square of opposition have logically undetermined truth values, which means even if I know the truth value of one, I can't know the truth value of the other, and this argument is invalid from a Boolean standpoint. But what if we adopt an Aristotelian standpoint? And specifically what I mean here is, let's adopt Aristotle's assumption that when we make arguments about things that exist in reality. We don't make arguments about things that don't exist. With that assumption in mind, if it's false, as the premise asserts, that some students are not social media users, would it have to be true that some students are social media users? And the answer to that is yeah. Because students are either social media users or not. And the premise asserts that it's not the case that some students are not social media users. Well, because students exist, if it's false that they're not social media users, they must be social media users. And what's being revealed to us here is the rule of subcontrary. The rule of subcontrary is sort of the mirror image of the rule of contrary. So remember, the rule of contrary has to do with corresponding A and E statements, and it says that given corresponding A and E statements, at least one of them is false. They might both be false, but they can't both be true. And the rule of subcontrary is kind of the mirror image of that. It says, given corresponding I and O statements, at least one is true. They can't both be false, okay? So the rule of subcontrary, given corresponding I and O statements, at least one is true. They can both be true. Some dogs are brown animals. Some dogs are not brown animals. But they can't both be false, because if they were both false, then we would be talking about something that doesn't exist. If I said to you, it's not the case that some dogs are brown animals, and it's not the case that some dogs are not brown animals, you'd say, well, there must not be any dogs, because they're either brown or not, okay? So now we can use our rule of subcontrary to evaluate this argument. It is false that some dogs are meat eaters, therefore some dogs are not meat eaters. Okay, we've got an I statement as a premise and an O statement as the conclusion. They are corresponding, they have the exact same subject and predicate terms. So by the rule of subcontraries, if the premised I statement is a false statement, the corresponding O statement, which is our conclusion here, would have to be true. And if the conclusion has to be true when the premises are true, that's a valid argument.